What's up guys, I'm Phoenix Master 1 and welcome back for some more Fire Emblem Heroes. In this video, I'm going to be giving you guys the review of the Mythic Hero banner that we're getting tomorrow, and it features Hel as a Dark Mythic unit. So Hel was, never released, and a lot of people did expect her to become a Mythic unit at some point because she is a godly figure essentially, and she never got her chance. So here she is, and she's not an Astra unit. A lot of people were expecting an Astra Mythic because Astra has the lowest amount of Mythic units, and it felt like it was turn of Astra, but it seems like maybe next time in September. But yeah, I'm actually pretty happy that she's not an Astra unit because we already have melee flyers as our mythics in Naga and Altina. And what we need in Astra season is a really good ranged support unit, and in best case scenario a ranged dancer like Plumeria or maybe Triandra. So if they can become a mythic unit in Astra season, I think that would really make a lot of Aetherytes players happy. So she's a dark mythic unit who gives defense. Giving defense is very important because we recently got Mila as a light mythic unit, and her isolation condition works on defense. So I'll explain that later on. So she's an axe flyer, of course, and she used to have a different weapon in story mode called Hel's Scythe, if you remember, and it didn't really have IO shield built into it. So Hel's Reaper gives her -1 special cooldown. It also has IO shield built into it, and she's got a conditional miracle. So basically this miracle works against every foe who is not a mage or a staff unit. So her miracle is simply not existent against mage units or staff units, and that's a pretty big thing because I think Hel is not going to be having very high resistance. So it's not really all that hard to, just one-shot her with a powerful red nuke, as you would have probably done in story mode when you faced her. So her miracle does have that condition. It is not a universal miracle. So this miracle is not active against mages and staff units. So it does have its pros and definitely cons because of that. Having miracle built into her weapon is definitely really good. Makes her a very solid unit for survival, and this can just open up the opportunities for Wings of Mercy degeneracy and Aetherytes. So because of Miracle, she can always survive, be at 1 HP, and be an anchor for her Wings of Mercy allies to teleport to her and just nuke the enemy's team, which is a pretty popular strategy with someone like Eliwood with Blazing Durandal, or even Seliph. I personally use Seliph, so that's really good with Miracle in the weapon. And the other condition in her weapon is that she can target resistance of the foes against who she's got Miracle active. This isn't really adaptive damage similar to Annette's Crusher, it's just that she can switch to hitting resistance of foes against whom she has got her Miracle, active. Against mages and staff units, she does not really target resistance, which is actually a good thing because mages and staff units usually will have better resistance than defense. So that's also another effect that she's got in her weapon. She's got Luna as her special, which becomes a 2-turn cooldown special, Distant Counter, and Guard Bearing. So Distant Counter is of course really good with a miracle weapon, and Guard Bearing is definitely the best skill she could run in slot B in my opinion, because flyers don't really have too many good slot B skills. And Guard Bearing is really amazing in something like Aetherytes defense because the first combat matters a lot, and that's where Guard Bearing will help you. So it reduces damage from foe's first hit in the first combat of the enemy phase. So it does got a lot of conditions. It only works in enemy phase and only reduces damage from foe's first hit. So if you're hitting her with a brave weapon from something like Ledgering Leaf, she's going to be taking the full damage from the second hit. And she's got Inevitable Death as her exclusive skill. This is a pretty good skill actually because she's always going to be having this active. So it inflicts -4 to all of the stats of foes within 2 spaces during the combat. And this is in combat debuff, so this can stack up with visible debuffs, and this can just help her and also help her allies. For example, if you put Hel on the front line and if you have a unit behind her, then the unit in the back line actually gets the benefit of Inevitable Death, which is really good. So that's Hel's base kit. It's honestly pretty solid that you could ask out of her. And I feel like seeing her weapon, a lot of once again, I've seen mixed reactions. A lot of people think she's really underwhelming, and a lot of people think she's really overpowered. I think she's just decent, and she can be pretty annoying in Aetherytes defense, honestly, because Miracle is definitely going to be making her annoying. But the main problem lies with the fact that she's a mythic unit. She cannot have, extra stats from blessings and stuff. So she's always gonna be at like 40 HP. And Bolt Tower is gonna leave her quite weak, and there's also the fact that mages exist. I personally use Close Counter Advantage Nino as my main unit in Light Season, because Nino can definitely destroy someone like Hel after getting fully buffed with a Blade Tome. So she definitely has her pros where she is really good, but there are also very visible flaws in her playstyle and overall kit. The best thing about her is that because of the Miracle Weapon, she can function as a frontline unit in Ether Raid's defense. She's definitely going to be much better at it compared to someone like Sothis. And Yuna is also there to give her a bit of competition as a green flyer. And Bramimond, in my opinion, is just better than Hel when it comes to being a mythic unit, because Bramimond is like an instant delete button a lot of times, and he's just insane unit, honestly. So Bramimond is still the best dark mythic in my opinion, and after that probably Hel, because of her capabilities of being a really good frontline unit, because of having distant counter, miracle, having guard bearing for the damage reduction, having Iode shield built into her weapon, and also inevitable death, which can definitely make her more bulky. So we can actually take a look at her stats, because she has been an enemy unit. We do know what kind of stat spread she's going to be having, and from the units who were enemy units and then were released, there's not really too much of a difference. So here we can use the information to our advantage. We see that she has got 40 HP and she's gonna get hit by Luna from this Red Bow guy. So this is just an estimate, but she's gonna be having a stat spread pretty similar to this. She's gonna be extremely fast. She's gonna have good base attack at 38 or even 39. She's gonna have good defense, but her resistance is gonna be extremely lacking. So that's where she suffers a lot. Her resistance is extremely low in a metagame where we have got a lot of mage nukes, so that could be troublesome for Hel, but outside of that, she is overall pretty decent with her stat spread. Being fast is really good because you actually do not want to get doubled with a miracle weapon, otherwise she's just gonna go down, and because she cannot really buff up her HP, not getting doubled is a big thing for her. So I personally think that she's a pretty decent unit, a pretty decent defensive mythic unit if you don't really have like two Bramimonds or something like that, because Bramimond and Hel is definitely a pretty good combo to be used in light and dark season on your defense team. She can definitely be pretty annoying because of her miracle weapon, so you would have to watch out for that. But again, Bolt Tower is a thing, and Bolt Tower is pretty much the best offensive structure in my opinion, so you should definitely upgrade that. More so now because Bolt Tower can weaken Hel quite a lot, and that can really help you take her out. Now, the impact of Hel in Ether Raids is going to be that she is going to be providing us a way to counter Milla, basically, or at least try to counter Milla. Because Hel gives defense, and defense is what Milla checks with her Milla's turn wheel for the isolation condition. So Hel being on a team can be utilized with dancers in a way that your dancers can avoid getting isolated by Milla. Now before we counter the enemy, it's important to know what kind of enemy we're going to be facing. So in my opinion, these are the three most common Milla builds you're going to be seeing. I know a lot of people run Bracing Stance or Fury, but in my opinion that's just not going to be optimal. Especially running Bracing Stance is absolutely not optimal because you need to increase their visible defense now more than ever, because Hel can exist and provide defense. So you're either going to be facing a budget Milla with double Fortress defense, or a semi-invested Milla with not a lot of merges with Fortress defense res, or a slightly higher merged Milla with Fortress defense res and plus defense IV. So these are the main Millas I think you're going to be facing from my experience. I personally am going to be running the Milla in the middle by giving her Fortress defense res, and she doesn't have plus defense IV. So the tech you have to use to counter Milla is basically have chill defense on your defense team to reduce Milla's defense, and you can defense stack up your dancer to prevent isolation, and Hel is going to be helping a lot here, as you will see. So I have pretty much listed the benchmarks you need to avoid getting isolated by each of these Millas, which are going to be pretty common, and this is like the max investment Milla plus 10 merged, which I think is going to be rising in usage in higher tiers after August, because Milla gets rerun in August. A lot of whales are probably going to plus and merger, so the absolute amount of defense you need to deny any kind of Milla's isolation is 59 defense. We know we have to stack up defense on dancers and use it along with chill defense to avoid getting isolated, But the question is that what kind of dancers and how much can they prevent the isolation, to what degree? So I'm gonna be listing all of the dancers and how they can perform with Hel if you're interested in this. I'll go over some of the free-to-play dancers here. So first of all, we have got Olivia. Stuff like Asian Plus and Wagasa Plus are really good weapons because they have got chill defense built into them, so you don't have to run a Sacred Seal on another ally. Olivia is basically the best free-to-play unit for avoiding this kind of isolation from Mila, because she can avoid isolation against 63 defense Mila after you have debuffed her with chill defense. Now it's important to keep in mind that Mila is not going to be getting debuffed on the first turn. She can still isolate your dancer, but after the first turn, you're going to be able to have chill defense debuff on her because of her high defense. She's likely going to be the target. And there are a lot of ways of targeting Mila's defense with Dark Shrine or with Infantry School, but chill defense is by far the most consistent option because of how insane her defense is. So Olivia is basically the best one if you run Gaetian Plus. If you don't want to run chill defense. Sylvia unfortunately kind of falls off because she was a really great dancer to avoid isolation from Battle Fjorm, but she isn't really as good as someone like Olivia to avoid isolation from Mila. Still, she can avoid the isolation from the budget Mila that I showed, who has double fortress defense. And Tethys is also a pretty popular merge project. She can also avoid isolation up to 58 defense and also provide Temari debuff. Raisin is a flying dancer, can provide ground order support, but unfortunately doesn't have a refinable weapon, so there's a limit to how much he can avoid isolation. Renea can use Spooky Sensor from Halloween Ileana, and that can really help her a lot, increasing her defense. Ninian at low merges can also kind of avoid isolation to a degree. Ninian does get rerun in the weekly revival banners, and she has been given out for free, so Ninian is kind of the free-to-play friendly option that a lot of people use. And then we move on to some of the premium dancers. We've got Resplendent Azura. The extra stats definitely help her a lot. As I said, Wagasa Plus is required. And then Xander and Berkut. Dancer Xander and Berkut are just the premium options to absolutely dab on Mila's head, because they can avoid getting isolated by even a plus 10 Mila if they have the chill defense support. So that's really amazing, and Berkut especially can just run Wagasa Plus and give that chill defense support to himself. So that's basically the way some people are going to be trying to counter Mila with the use of Hel and her defense stat, which she can give. But still, you know, there can be counterplay to this. I mean, offensive players can bring chill defense to debuff these dancers with high defense, but usually chill defense isn't really that common, so we'll have to see. I just had this theory craft which I wanted to share, and you could also like run oath skills on your dancers if you want to increase their defense against Mila. But if the Mila player brings a Versa or a Panic Manner, then you're going to be debuffed quite a bit. So I'm definitely pretty interested to see how the metagame changes around this. If people are going to be switching to these kinds of dancers to avoid isolation from Mila, or they're just going to be not really caring too much about Hel and just focus on Bramimons and their pre-existing mythic units. Because we have an estimate of how her stat spread will look, I do have some builds for you guys. The first build is a budget build, and you could also run Speed Res Bond just on a budget. And I think you could also run Aegis, because with Cook and Pulse, Aegis becomes a 1-turn cooldown special with her weapon. So on the first hit, you get your damage reduced by Guard Bearing, and then your damage gets reduced by Aegis on the second hit against like a Brave Weapon user. Or if Hel goes and attacks someone, she can definitely reduce the damage on the retaliation of that enemy with Aegis. So that could be done, I guess. And you could also invest more into her. I think Dragonfang Vantage could be something, but she's gonna be not that bulky at all if you remove her Guard Bearing. So this could be done if you are gonna be investing more into your Hel with the merges and stuff, because that could make her more bulky. So basically just have Dragonfang as a 2-turn cooldown special with Cook and Pulse. And if she doesn't get double, then she's gonna be in the Vantage range with Dragonfang ready. And if she can double the enemy, then she can nuke them with Dragonfang and just be a bit annoying with Vantage, I guess. She still has Miracle, so that could be used, and we have seen this kind of thing on Seliph, but Seliph has way more HP to use something like Vengeance. You could also use her as an Aetherwaite's Rally Trap with Gale Force, in my opinion, because of the -1 special cooldown that her weapon provides, and the Miracle is also really good because you get function as a Wings of Mercy anchor. So have attack speed push 4, have Heavy Blade, and her Inevitable Death also helps her with this. She can just teleport, use Rally with aerobatics, and then get danced by a dancer, and just initiate on the enemy and fall into the Wings of Mercy range if she does not kill them. And if she does kill them, then she can Gale Force another enemy unit. So that could work, and she of course can run ground orders, but that requires you to get rid of Inevitable Death, which is actually a pretty good skill for support and utility, and can definitely make Hel stronger. And now let us move on to the other units present on this banner. So the first unit we have is Fjorm. Fjorm, in my opinion, kinda suffers from the same fate as Legendary Ike, where she's waiting for a weapon refine, but at least she has better resistance than him, so she can function better as a tank, but her damage output can definitely be pretty lacking at times. She isn't the fastest unit and doesn't really score all that well in Arena for a Legendary unit, and she's easily beaten in terms of score by the new pair-up Legendary Heroes. And she doesn't really have any kind of fodder, which is really disappointing because Shield Pulse is just so much niche. You lose on an offensive special to make this worth, and it's just a bootleg damage reduction skill for dragons at this point, since they cannot inherit Close Call and the other stuff. But for other units, Close Call and Repel, all of those skills are just much better for damage reduction in my opinion. Then we've got Legendary Ike. So recently we got Fallen Ike on the Fallen banner, and he completely outclasses Legendary Ike in every single way. He does have a better weapon in Chaos Dragnil and can also use damage reduction skills because of his high speed. And the legendary status of Legendary Ike can be a detriment at times for him because you cannot really freely bless him like Fallen Ike and just use him whenever you want in any season. So Legendary Ike really suffers because sword infantries are just so competitive, and he's kind of fallen behind, so he's waiting for a weapon refine. He still has a distance counter weapon and a 4-turn Radiant Ether, so I'm really looking forward to his weapon refine to make him better because it's really sad to see his state. As for fodder, Warding Breath, I think that there's just so many better slotted skills in this day and age, especially defensively. And Warding Breath cannot even be inherited to range units, so I feel like there are better defensive skills to be used in 2020 in Slotty, and you could also have Brave Lucina for the Drive Breath support, so that's another thing. So I don't think Warding Breath is really that valuable anymore, and that's basically the only fodder he can provide. Even though she has got 180 BST, a Distance Counter Breath that is effective on dragons, Legendary Tiki isn't really as strong as you think. She's very balanced overall with her stat spread, and that's what tends to hold her back. And her dual weakness to armor effective and dragon effective weapons is also a big detriment because those are just so common. She also has low armor movement, unlike her other alt, Fallen Tiki, who can get more movement from Solitary Dream, who is colorless, so she doesn't really have weapon strangle disadvantage against green units, and Solitary Dream is just a better skill overall. Compared to the old legendary units like Legendary Ike and Legendary Fjorm, Tiki is still better because she can still score well in Arena, but if you do use her in Arena, then it's gonna be a very tough time for you because there are just so many threats who can nuke her and so many dragon and armor effective weapons. So it's gonna be a really hard time for you to use her in Arena. For scoring base, she does help, but in combat, it's gonna be hard. And nowadays, Arena has become extremely challenging. So there are definitely other better Earth Legendary options in my opinion if you care about scoring that much. As I said with Legendary Ike, there are many other slotty options compared to Breath skills in 2020, and Fierce Breath I would say is probably the worst one out of all of the breaths because it doesn't really help you tank like Steady or Warding Breath or preventing doubles like Darting Breath, but it just gives you more damage, which isn't really all that great in my opinion. Bullfighter is present on literally just so many units, it has lost its value. Every armor unit just has Bullfighter, so it's not really particularly very unique fodder. Air is still one of the best dagger units in the game in my opinion. She's pretty nice offensively and gives you really amazing support as an offensive mythic unit in light season. She can run Temari Plus or be useful in Air Force, which is basically a Gale Force team composition, or she could heal up allies with Sparkling Boost, so she can provide pretty good support, and she's a range unit. She's also a flying unit, so she's got pretty great mobility. And we already get free air from the story mode, and that is enough in my opinion with Peony to reach tier 27, the highest tier in Ether Raids, and stay in top 3k. But mythic merges do matter if you care about ranking, and mythic merges are basically compulsory if you want to stay in top 1k in Ether Raids. And mythic merges can give you more room of error as you could score higher in Ether Raids, with your lift, so that could be an option if you want to increase your scoring and ether rates to get more margins on your air. And colorless this time is pretty good, so it's not that bad to go after air. Her fodder is basically Mystic Boost, which is pretty nice for self-sufficiency, but faces so much competition from so many other very good slot B skills. For flyers, this is really good because they don't have too many options for slot B, but majority of the times it's going to be facing a lot of competition for self-sufficiency. Legendary Raw is one of the better sword units in the game. He isn't at that part where all of the top tier sword units chill, but just slightly outside of that range. Mainly because like his weapon isn't really as stacked with effects and other stats as those top tier sword units. And he does have distant counter weapon, which is effective on dragon units, which is pretty nice, and his stat spread is quite good too. It's just that, as I said, his weapon doesn't have a lot of insane conditions that new power creep sword units have, but still he's pretty decent. He is fast enough to keep up with the metagame, and he's a good arena scoring unit, but Legendary Edelgard does score a bit better than him, being able to score 180 BST. As for his fodder, he has got bonus doubler, that's all he has got, which is a decent skill, but panic is very common, so it does hamper its usability. And bonus doubler is also infantry only skill, so you can only make so much use of this. And only few units can afford to use this in my opinion over other slotty skills which are always consistent and don't really require any kind of buff to function and don't really get shut down by panic. Fallen Female Corrin is still one of the best dragons in the game because of being a colorless unit. She doesn't really have any kind of weapon strangle advantage or disadvantage except for Raven Tomes, and she's got a fantastic stat spread to function in both phases. Still, she has to watch out for the insane amount of dragon effective weapons that we have got in the metagame. Savage Breath, her weapon, can give her +6 to all of her stats if she's alone at max in 2 spaces, which is really good with her already good stat spread. So she is just a very solid unit. She's very flexible, quite versatile, and just a overall strong unit in general. As for her fodder, she has got attack speed solo and sudden panic. Now attack speed solo is present on a lot of units, but it's still a very good skill, and sudden panic is only available on Garrick, making it pretty rare skill to have. So she does have pretty good fodder, and overall she is a pretty strong unit. Thrasir is second best anima defense mythic unit after Mirabilis in my personal opinion. She's extremely powerful nuke with really good base kit, and her weapon is super solid as well. It does have dragon effectiveness, which is even better in the Aster season when people are going to be using Naga, and she's just so strong that even she can kill Altina at times with her killing intent active, so that's just testament to her overall power, being able to take out red units like that. Killing intent, her slot B skill, is also really amazing, giving her instant desperation if any kind of penalty is present on the foe, or if they're not at full HP, which is super easy to meet. And it also gives her in combat speed and resistance debuff, and she's pretty easy to fit in any kind of infantry pulse team or any team in general. She's just very flexible. She can be at the bottom of the infantry pulse chain to have a strong pre-charge special, and even outside of ether rates, like, she is extremely strong in it overall, and definitely one of the best green mages we have in the game. As for fodder, she has got Flashing Blade 4, which is a good fodder, but unfortunately cavalry units and flying units cannot have access to it, and like a lot of fast units can definitely make use of this with Gale Force builds because it does give you the true damage as well as the special acceleration. Panic Smoke is also another skill which you could inherit at the same time. I think it's mainly useful in ether rates defense where a lot of people use visible buffs. Altina is definitely one of the better sword units we have in the game with a dual phase brave weapon that has got distant counter built into it. She's got Twin Blades as a special which doesn't care about damage reduction in the day and age of a lot of damage reduction skills. And she's got a preferred IO Shield slot skill that can give her more bulk and attack. So overall she's a pretty fantastic unit, but for the game mode that she's made for, she doesn't really provide a lot of support like Peony, Air, or Mila in the light season. And one criticism which she has is that she cannot really use mythic buffs herself to Vantage Sweep that well because her HP is still going to be lacking a lot of times, and like many times Thrasirs can just take her out if killing intent is active and if she's not in the Vantage range, and hardy bearing Thrasirs can also be annoying with pre-charge specials, so that is always going to be a problem, and people do generally build up their teams in Astra season to face Vantage because Vantage Altina is like gonna be present everywhere. Basically everyone has her because she was given out as a free unit. So Vantage is definitely a thing which a lot of Aether Raid's defense teams easily try to counter with Hardy Bearing or with Cloud Myogi and those kinds of things. So there, Altina can struggle at times, but whenever it's about cleanup, she does have the power to just clean up the remaining units and just Vantage sweep partially. And definitely hold on her own when it comes to power compared to someone like Naga, who even struggles with that. So getting more Altina merges is going to be helping you in Aether Raid scoring to give you better ranks and can definitely give you more room of error, as I said, for AR 2. She only has attack defense Oath as a fodder, which is not really worth just foddering her off for, in my opinion, because she's a mythic unit, can definitely help you with extra scoring and also in melee and strike, of course. And then we have got Fiora. So if the blue pool wasn't worse already with legendary Tiki and Fjorm, Fiora completely murders it and its value. So blue color is easily the worst color on this banner. And for Fiora, all I would like to say is that just use Shigure or Sigren, who are easily mergeable and are not 5-star logged. The only thing Fiora has got going for her is that she has got the highest resistance out of any Lance Flyer. But that is really not enough to stand out in such a competitive class type where she doesn't have the offensive prowess as the other Lance Flyers. So Fiora just drowns in the competitiveness of Lance Flyers when we have got so many present in the 3-star, 4-star pool who are easily mergeable. Guard Lance is pretty decent, but there are other defensive options for fodder, and they can be utilized with tier 4 stand skills, which also provides the guard effect. And Pegasus Flight is another skill which he has got, which is just so niche that only a handful of flyers can actually use it because you need the resistance and the speed stat for it. So it does check 2 stats, so she's not very impressive as a unit and definitely not impressive that much as a fodder. Leila is definitely one of the best dagger units in the entire game. She has got insane offensive stat spread with equally insane preferred weapon, so constant dagger gives her +5 attack and speed in the player phase. And it also has conditional fire sweep dagger effect, which is very easy to meet with a support partner within 2 spaces. So she's just very strong as an offensive unit. And the other effect of her dagger is that she can swap places with the support partner. And that is just very good in Aether Raids because you can use her with broadleaf users or with tanks or just even with Aerobatics Dancer, because you attack with Leila and you swap places with your Dancer. That Dancer can actually jump to 3 spaces because of Aerobatics, and you just dance your Leila, use reposition and get out of there. So that kind of hit and run is just very hard to catch for a lot of Aether Raid's defense teams. And just in general, she's a very powerful dagger unit because of her stat spread, and that weapon is really amazing too. And because she can have the fire swoop effect with her weapon, it opens up her slot B for other skills like lull skills, null follow-up, special spiral, or even disarm trap, which is pretty good in Aether Raids. For fodder, you could inherit life and death 4 and the dual rally skill at the same time, so those are 2 high scoring skills, which are really good for scoring game modes. Otherwise, you could just inherit life and death 4 and also the roost skill if you need to, and if you already have a dual rally skill. When it comes to green armor units, Edelgard is definitely one of the best one because of her flexibility and her stat spread. She hits incredibly hard with that 42 base attack, and she has amazing mixed bulk. Edelgard definitely has her flexibilities where she can function in player phase with her usual Heavy Blade and Slot A, Gale Force, Quicken Pulse, Raging Storm build, which is very unique because she can kill 3 units in 1 turn without a Dancer, but she can also just function as a boring but practical enemy phase tank with Distant Counter and Special Fighter or Vengeful Fighter. Amira is pretty good for giving her in-combat debuffs, and she can also stop follow-up attacks with that, but keep in mind null follow-up is kinda common, so that can always just go through her weapon at times. Raging Storm is still pretty absurd, as it just gives you instant Gale Force, and it does give you follow-up attacks against Dragon units and Beast units. And the overall problem that Edelgard can sometimes run into is that she's just too over-reliant on her solo condition from her weapon and her slot B skill, because at the end of the day, she's still an armor unit. As for fodder, Armored Stride is definitely the most valuable skill that she has got because it's a really good skill if you want to use an armor unit in your team, but you don't want to run another armor unit to give them armor march support. So Armored Stride can be really good for those kinds of units and team compositions. Overall, green color is definitely the best one. It's absolutely stacked with Thrasir, Edelgard, and also Hel. So Edelgard can be really good for arena scoring, of course, and both Thrasir and Hel are good for lift reduction and Ether Raid's defense. Colorless, in my opinion, is the second best color because Leila is just insane, and Fallen, Corrin, and AR are also really good. Then after that, probably red, and blue is obviously the worst color. Doesn't really provide you that much for value. Red color is also avoidable for many people who already have these kinds of units. I mean, everyone has got Altina, which they received, and Sword Infantry units are really common, and we already have a free Legendary Ike. So, I mean, I could see why people would just avoid red color as well with blue color. And green and colorless are probably the most valuable ones this time around. Now, before you summon on this banner, I would like to remind you that Choose Your Legends 4 is coming up next month in mid-August or August end at the very least. So it is going to be having the 3 houses units. They have said that Sothis is going to be returning in early August, which is just so weird. It's not like we're going to be getting another legendary banner or anything like that. So she's probably going to be on some kind of celebration banner. So if you are a big 3 houses fans, then that is definitely something to watch out for, as we might know about it before this banner ends. So could be something that you could hold off on pulling on this banner. So let me know if you're going to be pulling on this banner or not, and share your thoughts on Hel in the comments as well. I'm quite curious. I want to thank all of my YouTube members for their constant support. If you enjoyed, then please be sure to leave a like and a comment, and share this video with your friends who are thinking of summoning on this banner. Also be sure to hit subscribe and hit the notification bell, because YouTube sub boxes are about as functional as Hel's miracle against mages. So with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.